Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide from the iHeartRadio network every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time worldwide on the iHeartRadio network. Also, Big C Sports is voted the #1 sports show in the universe, so thank you for you good old boys down south. Also, I want to say iHeartRadio is the #1 media company in the United States. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, as well as Paris, France, and London. You know what? Also, you good old boys in Canada, I realized why my voice got so raspy over the past couple of days. I went to the doctor and he said, you can't discredit anyone's national anthem, so I apologize. I'll try to get it right before I even try it again, you good old boys. But there's no one I love more than the land of the free and the home of the brave, and that's the good old boys from United States of America. Big C, how you good old boys doing down south, by the way?
Jonathan, everything is wonderful down here. You know, if life got better, I'd be tickling myself.
Yeah.
We're sitting around waiting on this wonderful weekend, the final week of the NFL. You know, the bowl season is about halfway through. I think we've had 30, 40 games thus far already in the college bowl season. You know, the NBA is getting into full swing, and college basketball, Charlton, is tipping off. You know, it is going, and teams are jockeying already. You know, we've had national rankings come out. We've had several upsets. But, you know, this is an exciting time of year when you got all the major sports, even that Canadian sport of hockey.
Oh, yeah.
Is going on, Charlton.
Well, Big C, today's a beautiful day. It is the December the 28th, 2016. Coming up on the end of this year into the beautiful new year 2017. So many great things to look forward to. I'm telling everyone in the sports business, from the NFL, the NHL, NBA, whether it's college sports, you got to watch the Big C Sports calendar, the women of Big C Sports. It is simply off the hook. We have some Playboy models that are also part of the Big C Sports, and so many sports teams are going to love what we do with our Team IP and G5 Textiles clothing line. It's going to be very beautiful, state-of-the-art merchandising. And also, Big C, some of the great things that we talk about, you brought up the world of, you know, so many things happening in college football, college basketball. Ronda Rousey, she's also fighting, you know, this Friday. I love the way this young woman fights. But before we even get into the great Ronda Rousey and some of the great people in the world of sports, I just want to say our thoughts go out to one of the greatest actresses, Carrie Fisher, and she was well known from being Princess Leia in the Star Wars saga, Big C. And we talk about Star Wars all the time and being the #1 sports show in the universe. Well, long, long ago in a galaxy far, far away, she came across the screen with the great Luke Skywalker and Lando Calrissian. Also, all these great actors, you know, and just appreciate what she did, even though Darth Vader made it, you know, Han Solo made it very popular in Star Wars. That just opened the minds of what Star Trek had already done, letting people realize what life is like in outer space, and that we're probably not the only living life forms in the universe. Just your thoughts on the great Carrie Fisher, as our heart and thoughts go out to her family, Big C.
Well, no, Charlton, you know, the world knows her as Princess Leia, but, you know, when she got her start in acting, Charlton, she actually got her start in acting in a sports movie.
Yeah.
And, you know, she played in this movie, Heaven Can Wait, where she was a tennis player in the movie. But, you know, this is a movie of an inspiring guy who wanted to be an NFL quarterback, Warren Beatty, Charlton.
Yeah.
And, you know, he took over the body of a Los Angeles Rams quarterback who had died in a tragic accident. But, you know, that's where Carrie Fisher got her movie starts, in a sports movie. But when you think about her mother, Debbie Reynolds, and her dad, Eddie Fisher, you know, two of the icons of Hollywood, Charlton.
Yeah.
She had great lineage as far as getting an opportunity to go into the career of Hollywood and movies and television series. But, you know, you think about the following that she created around the world. When Star Wars came out, the second episode with Jabba the Hutt,
yeah,
you know, she became a sex symbol in America.
Yeah.
And, you know, many people wanted to have her poster up on the wall, but, you know, it was just the broadness of her role that she exemplified in that series, Charlton. When you look at what she did, how, you know, she was a dominating person in this movie. She just wasn't a character actor. She was a dominating role in Star Wars.
Yeah, very much.
She had so many followers and lovers throughout the world, Charlton, that appreciated what she did for women in this role, taking a leadership capacity And when we're talking about a distant galaxy and how things would be in the future, that they were subservient, that she could be the leader. And, that's how she led her life out front, Charlton. She didn't hold back from taboos and other things. She went out and was a trailblazer in many ways. Whether they were good or bad, she was a trailblazer. And that's how anybody should want to live their life. Not worried about what everybody's thoughts are about you, but enjoy what you have. None of us will live forever. But the joy you get out of living is what makes living worthwhile, Charlton.
Well, Big C, I very much appreciate that. And again, our thoughts go out to her family. And I want to say this segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive one, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. And Big C, also back to, Princess Leia, and talking about how she played that role. And as a great actress, Carrie Fisher, we often make a parody about the Cadillac Escalade, how yours is always muddy, but it's such a gorgeous vehicle. It's kind of an oxymoron to even let it get dirty, but I see a lot more people doing that now. And she reminds me of the Escalade. They were driving dirty spaceships in the Millennium Falcon before the Escalade was even invented. They never watched that thing, her and Solo. And what's that guy that looks like your friend, Chewbacca? Is that the guy that looks like your friend, Big C? They never watched their Escalade. So I think maybe Big C was copying, the Millennium Falcon from a long, long ago in a galaxy far, far away. So many things in the world of Star Wars and Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica. So many great things and actresses. And you just very pointed out that she started in the business as a sports person, Big C. And speaking of the world of sports, look at the great Ronda Rousey, who also follows Big C Sports on Facebook. She's fought Holly Holmes, and that's when she was kind of took a defeat and had to reassess how she became a fighter. But she also posed nude, in a sense, in a magazine. I think it wasn't Playboy magazine, but it's Sports Illustrated. The Body Issue, she showed how not only committed she is as a fighter, Big C, but she took very good care of her health. She's also been able to get into the world of acting. So Ronda Rousey, just like Carrie Fisher, they're not one-dimensional people. They're multifaceted, and I'm proud of both of them as actors, but also for other young women around the world that want to get into the business, be it sports or entertainment. Big C, do you see a parallel in those two?
Well, Charlton, you think about how they work, and being athletic, being a focal point in society, to have people revel over you.
Yeah.
You want to be a part of what you are, to emulate your lifestyle. And you think about it, this is the health of America.
Oh, yeah.
That's what sports is all about, health. We've seen politicians talk about having people be healthy.
Yeah.
And going out and making better choices about consumption, even though America's led by the fast food industry.
Oh, yeah.
But the dedication of these athletes to chisel their bodies, to hone it to peak performance, that's also a revelation of the mind. The body just doesn't show up like my six-pack in the refrigerator.
Yeah, I understand.
You got to go out and create your own, Jonathan, and that's what Ronda Rousey is. When you think about, we talked about Carrie Fisher, the late Carrie Fisher, being an inspiration to women.
Yeah.
But that's what Ronda Rousey has been, Jonathan, not just in the sports world, but in the world. So when they see that dedication and you can appreciate what she's done, because she was just a normal person.
Yeah.
Prior to becoming this great championship, MMA wrestler, Charlton, fighter. But, her dedication, even in loss, she came back and now is seeking to rekindle her career and get back to the pinnacle of what she once was, Charlton.
Yeah.
But you just don't lay down when you have a loss in life. When you think about so many great athletes who have suffered losses, we lost Muhammad Ali earlier in the year, Charlton. When he had his loss to Joe Frazier, he was undefeated up until that point.
Yeah.
And he lost, one of the fights of the century in Madison Square Garden. But he didn't stop. He even fought and persevered through a broken jaw, Charlton, for 4 or 5 rounds in that fight. But, this is what you see in a Ronda Rousey. This person who has gone out there, we've seen her in commercials and endorsements.
Yeah.
We've seen her actions in the rings. But she's a leader. She's not a follower. She's a leader. This is what we see so often in society, in life, and in sports. You look for that person that you can lean on and say, this is my inspiration.
Yeah.
I may not be her, but this is my inspiration. She has set the table for what I should be aspiring to, not just as an athlete, but as a person who is willing to give their all.
Well, Big C, I think what I love about the world of sports, and I'm not knocking anybody because I think anyone can complain, anyone can criticize. But like Sam Jackson says in the commercial, what's in your wallet? And I look at what Rousey's doing this weekend on Friday in Las Vegas, and she's having a beautiful fight coming up in the T-Mobile Arena, and she's probably going to win it. She's fighting Amanda Nunes. Now, Nunes is a good fighter as well, but Rousey has used her business acumen, this attitude of, sometimes they say jocks are just dumb athletes. She's made herself famous in modeling. She's made herself famous in television. She makes commercials now, and she's someone that has that runway look, but she's not that skinny, what they call emaciated model look that some people say they like. They want to see a woman that's 6 feet tall and 58 pounds. I don't think that's sexy. This woman's built, she works out hard, and she has a more healthy body image for young girls. And I think it's important for people like her or Layla Ali with their body image. They're not 102 pounds, and they're called sex symbols, but they're also well put together. Big C, you know how important it is for male athletes and even female athletes to have this great, muscular body image. But I think it's a good model that you have someone like Rousey who's not 100 pounds and she looks like your average in-fit woman. I think that's a good message to send to our young girls. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charles, so many years and months and weeks and days have been put on this tweak figure. But the average woman doesn't look like that.
No, not at all.
Has curves, and you see that with Ronda Rousey. You see it with most MMA fighters, Charles.
Yeah.
These are gorgeous women.
Yeah.
Physically and mentally, because what they have to endure in preparation for these fights. So you think about her. She's in peak condition.
Oh, yeah.
She doesn't have a 102-pound frame, as you talked about. This is a woman, you think about Cyborg, how dominant she is at her side.
Yeah.
But, these are women that can compete. They can compete on the stage as far as, athleticism, on the stage as far as modeling and beach office.
Yeah.
These women go out and prepare themselves. And the days of the woman who is only eating a lettuce salad every day, Charles.
Yeah.
That's not healthy.
No, not at all.
A woman who can sit down and eat some meat and potatoes like a man and enjoy a meal and go out and have the perseverance and the fortitude to go out and work out, Charleston, where she doesn't become this blob, as people say. We have men who do that also, Charleston.
Yeah.
But, to be able to sit down and enjoy a meal with friends and family, Charleston, and not say I have to go to the bathroom just to chuck it up.
Yeah.
That's something that you can appreciate in a woman because she looks at herself as being a total healthy person, which she has demonstrated. And I think what you said about all the young women who are out there who have been lambasted by so many people in society and tried to make them feel ashamed of themselves.
Yeah.
And how dare society put that onus on young women to say, you have to look a certain way for people to appreciate you. No.
Yeah, 45 pounds.
Have a conversation and have some intelligence.
Yeah.
That's what men appreciate about women.
Well, Big C, to
have someone who's going to giggle at everything you say and not be able to put a sentence together, a la Terry Bradshaw, who couldn't spell cat when he was playing.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. Well, there's something about that, too, and I just want to say with the UFC's new ownership group headed by WME and IMG, they also represent Rousey. It plunked down $4.2 billion because of this UFC fight thing, and she's part of it. I know there's Conor McGregor, and there's other people, Diaz out of Stockton. They're all good fighters coming up, but there's something about this woman that has stood at the pinnacle of the sports world. Whether she wins or loses a fight, she's helped more women make money, Big C. And speaking of money, this segment is sponsored by your California Lottery. What can a buck do for you? Go out and spend a buck on the lottery, and maybe you'll win it. Even if you don't win it, at least you can help contribute to half of the cost of some of the school. A lot of that money goes to educations. And also, Big C, I know we're going to win eventually because I keep saying it and I keep praying it, so I know it's going to happen eventually. And Big C, your thoughts on us winning that lottery anytime soon, Big C?
Well, what y'all do, the new year's coming, new things are coming, new everything is coming. So maybe that big pocket of new money is coming.
Oh, yeah.
And just give me a quarter, 25 cents, whatever. Enough to get another can of Skoal or something.
I understand.
Just hook a fella up.
I understand. And also, Big C, just going back, again, congratulations, Ronda Rousey, becoming an intelligent businesswoman, not just a fighter. And when we transition a little bit, Big C, about people who make money, look at baseball. The Hall of Fame voters, and they talk about it being tainted by Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, and should Barry Bonds and Clemens be in the Hall of Fame? I say yes because of what they did on the field. If they're going to point the eye at any athlete in the history of sports, you can find good and bad on any of them, Big C. But Barry Bonds and Clemens, if you look at what they did while they played the game, they also played against guys who were on the same stuff that they were accused of being on. I know that may be controversial because people want to be naive, but a lot of athletes, they do something that's not natural to get bigger, stronger, and faster. Even the great late Babe Ruth, he did things too to give him more energy. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, for decades, Charlton, baseball players were known to play on greenies, which are basically speed. So, to accelerate their muscle reflex. But baseball has never been a clean sport. People talk about the purest. Show me at any time that baseball was pure.
Yeah.
The only thing pure about baseball, Charlton, is running. That's it. Running and throwing. Those are the only things that are pure. But even in the throwing, on the pitcher's mound, you look at Roger Clemens, who was lambasted, who came into the major leagues out of the University of Texas. He was about a 180-pound pitcher. When he retired, he weighed about 250 without a gun.
Yeah.
That was the difference, But also, the athleticism of players nowadays, Charlton, in the major leagues. When you think about the weightlifting, before, they did a little stretching, tossed a few baseballs around 50 years ago. Now, players have personal trainers. They have weight rooms in the stadium where these players work out like athletes, like football players, okay? Even basketball players lift weights now, Charlton. It used to be said you didn't want to be too muscular because you're going to lose the touch of your shot.
Yeah.
What it does is enhances it, Charlton. That's all muscles do, is enhances everything that you can do in life. And people say, well, you look at Barry Bonds, the growth of Barry Bonds from the time when he started with the Pittsburgh Pirates to where he looked in his latter years with the San Francisco Giants. That's through the weight room. Mark McGwire, as a rookie with the Modesto A's, out of San Diego.
Yeah.
He weighed 185 pounds, so he's 6'5".
Yeah.
Weighed 185. In his latter years with the St. Louis Cardinals, he was up to 270 pounds.
Wow.
There was a 90-pound differential from what he was as a rookie in AAA ball in California to where he finished his career in St. Louis. And he didn't get that just sitting there chewing bubblegum, Charlton. We realize that. But even if you use steroids or any other substance in sports, Charlton, you have to ask this question. And all the sports writers out there, the naysayers who say, well, he was on something. How do you inject someone's eyes, Charlton? How do you inject someone's reflexes?
Yeah.
What Barry Bonds did as far as seeing and hitting a baseball, Charlton, that was unnatural. And it wasn't from steroids. When you look back early in his career, he hit the ball the same way. He may not have hit as many home runs, but he hit the ball the same way. And when you think about the number of times that the bat was taken out of his hand in the last 2 years he played in San Francisco, Charlton, over 500 times they took the bat out of his hands with intentional walks.
Yeah.
You think about that. You could say that he tarnished baseball, that his home run record should have an asterisk by it, but you should also have an asterisk to say how much he meant to baseball.
Oh, yeah.
Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, these baseball players brought baseball back from the brink of extinction, Charles.
I agree, Big C.
Baseball was interesting all over again.
Yeah.
The long ball was the ball that you wanted to see. They built a stadium in San Francisco because of the way that, Barry Bonds was hitting the baseball.
Yeah.
They did the same thing in St. Louis. With McGwire, they eventually ended up building a new stadium there in St. Louis. So when you talk about the impact of these players, Charlton, and there's been many players since those guys who've hit 40, 50 home runs and disappeared after a year.
Yeah.
But these players did it consistently. They hit the home runs. So were these other players, Brian Baum a couple of years ago with the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah.
Led the league in home runs, but eventually, he was caught on juice and suspended.
Yeah.
But the excitement that it brings to the game, let every broadcaster, and we're in this industry, but let every broadcaster who sits up there who's never played the game talk about how somebody has hurt the game. Yet they don't even know how to play the game. They can write a story, they can tell a story, but you tell them go in there and face a curveball that's coming in at 90 miles an hour, coming at your head, and hopefully that it breaks. Okay?
Yeah, I understand.
Sit there and deal with those reflexes.
Yeah.
Tell all these guys to talk about a quarterback. Go out there and dress as a wide receiver. Go across the middle with some head-hunting safety out there and let him take you out.
Well,
right? Let him do that.
Well,
go in there and try to defend. Back in the day when Shaq O'Neal was playing,
yeah.
Go in there and defend Shaq and talk about how somebody's not giving their all in the game. So, I had a friend that used to be in the world of wrestling, the entertainment field of wrestling. I can't call it that, but even though they're great athletes.
Right.
And everybody talked about how all they're doing is acting, and, it's just a skit. It stunts. Get in the ring with one of these guys because they're dedicated athletes, Shelton. You see their bodies when they walk in, they're chiseled.
Yeah.
You're not talking about somebody who came out the bar room, okay?
Yeah, that's true.
Chiseled, dedicated athletes. If you ever think that these guys are not real, get in the ring with one of them.
What?
Any athlete, Charlton, on the professional level, is a dedicated individual. You have to take your hat off to them. Men, women that are professional athletes, I respect every one of them, Charlton.
Well, Big C, speaking of respect, this segment is sponsored by United Labor Guaranteed $100,000 life insurance with no medical questions. We are also endorsed by the American Heart Association and the American Cancer Society. We work with all of the unions in the country under the AFL-CIO, and we're looking to hire over 1,000 licensed insurance brokers because we simply want to put people back to work. Tweet up to Charlton and Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network. That's every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Also back to the Hall of Fame voters. And Big C, in the world of sports, I'll say that I think everybody uses something, okay? We go back not just McGuire and Bonds. You look at the great Manny Ramirez. You look at, we talked about Babe Ruth, Roger Clemens. Let's look at other sports. Marion Jones, Lance Armstrong. They were also considered great in their industries. We just had this thing done on CTE in the NFL and how some players were using whatever it took to get bigger, stronger, and faster. Well, when Barry Bonds broke Hank Aaron's record, Hank didn't really appreciate it because he thought that he cheated. Well, even when before Hank played, there were things that the great Babe Ruth also did to get more juice out of his swing, Big C. I just think this is true. We all want to see athletes that are bigger, stronger, and faster. They don't get there just by natural evolution of the human body. I look at players back in the 1960s that played offensive line, say in the Pac-8 or in the Big 8 conference at that time or the Big 10. You had offensive linemen that weighed 200 pounds. It's hard to play even linebacker if you don't weigh 220. And nowadays, if you don't weigh 300 pounds, it's hard to be a lineman right now on the offensive line for any Division I college football team, Big C. So we watch the college football shaping up right now. Alabama and Washington. We have Clemson and Ohio State. Most of the offensive linemen on all four teams, they're probably closer to 300 pounds than they are close to 200 pounds, Big C. Did they get that way just by evolution? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they're close to over 300 pounds, not close to 300 pounds. All of them exceed 300 pounds, Charlton, to be realistic in this thing.
Yeah.
You look at the game the other night, the Monday night game with Kansas City, playing.
Yeah.
And we looked at Poe, the defensive lineman.
Oh, yeah.
The backfield that they thought everybody was going to run, the football.
He threw a pass, yeah.
He did the jump pass, and they have him listed at about 347 pounds, Charlton. It's probably true. We're a little closer to about 367 pounds.
Yeah.
He is the behemoth of a man, but the evolution of the athlete has been twofold. When we talk about players taking substance, Charlton, everything that you eat now, Charlton, that comes out of a store is a substance. You don't go chicken in 6 weeks to go to the market and think that some of those byproducts are not left in their bodies. Hogs are going to slaughter after 180 days because they've reached the weight that you expect of them. But when we think about cows producing the amount of milk that they have to be milked twice a day, Charlton, and that's not from normal production, Charlton. All these things have additives in them. These additives do not dissipate when that product has reached market, Charlton. It's still in the tissues or the liquids of this product that's been introduced to the animals.
Yeah.
So you talk about evolution. It's been evolution of science, Charlton, that has forced human society to grow larger, faster, stronger. It's not all natural. So you can't sit there and say that any athlete is clean, Charlton. They're not, because you and I consume it. You know, you consume more than me because I eat a lot of natural stuff.
Right.
You know, but when you think about that, all your children are out there consuming these things. And so when they talk about generational changes, Charlton, it's done through science that has forced the evolution of man to accelerate. So when we think about these athletes, and you look nowadays at these kids coming out of high school, Charlton, so these football players, and these linemen, they're going into college at 300 plus pounds.
Oh, yeah.
They're not getting there, but they're going there that way. And I remember going into college, and if you had a 250-pound lineman, you had a big lineman. You know, 260 was this guy was huge.
Oh, easily, yeah.
You know, and a running back, you never would have thought of seeing a running back that weighed, 220 pounds. You know, that he was too big to play running back. You know, he had to make a tight end or something out of him. I remember several years ago in the NFL, Levon Kirkland, middle linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers, wore number 99, eventually ended his career in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But this guy was a 290-pound linebacker, Charlton, and he was on a great linebacking core, with Louis Lloyd, Kevin Green, some tremendous linebackers that the Pittsburgh Steelers had. But Levon Kirkland weighed 290 pounds. When I grew up, Charlton, as a young ball player, he would have never played linebacker. They would have made some offensive lineman out of him, if not a defensive tackle.
Yeah.
But this guy could run. He was a tremendous athlete, and he played for a decade in the NFL, dominating his position. So when you talk about, you got to put an asterisk next to a name, Charlton. These sports writers need to understand science and what it has done to the modern day athlete as far as changing the body. And so you can't put an asterisk next to his name, Charlton. Think about it in the 70s, and I know you were a young kid. You were chewing bubble gum.
I still chew bubble gum, Big C. I still chew the gum.
But, some of the greatest pitchers in baseball during that era, Charlton, had this thing called the spitball. Was that not doctoring the ball when they were using some foreign substance to make the ball move even more? So do you go back and detract all of those records? The great Gaylord Perry, and he and his brother both pitched in the major leagues. 300 victories, okay?
Yeah.
How many of those victories came from tainted baseballs, Charlton?
Yeah.
When you think, and many times he had been kicked out of games for using a foreign substance, scuffing up the ball. So baseball pitchers did this forever to try to outdo batters, Charlton.
Yeah.
But, the writers don't look at it that way. Why? Because the majority of these pitchers were white, Charlton. They were doctoring the baseball.
Yeah.
Maybe about 99% of them. They were doctoring baseball. It was okay because they needed to find an advantage. So the writers didn't say, hey, he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Because when you look at the Hall of Fame, Charlton, they're all in the Hall of Fame. These guys who were doctoring the baseball, doing something illegal to gain an advantage. So they're saying that the guys with the bat were not supposed to have equalizers.
Yeah.
The game has always been that way, Charlton. So, I appreciate sports writers because that's how I learned, from reading. Used to read the paper on the porch with my dad on Sunday when he'd go out there and sit there and listen to baseball games. I do the comic things. He had the whole paper.
Yeah.
But, you learn from these writers about games, about everything. But back then, the writers were more honest. Now they're egotistical, Charlton. The writers are egotistical. The sportscasters are egotistical. It's all about me, what my ideas are, okay?
Yep.
It's not about the game.
Well, Big C, ironically, we talked about how the young, back in the day, in the 60s, you could be a 200-pound offensive or defensive lineman. Now you have to be about 300 pounds. Well, at the NFL level, Gregory plays for the Cowboys. Great pass rusher, Randy Gregory, and he helped them beat Detroit 42-21. But he had some suspension issues over some substance abuse, and I guess they're still fighting that. And Jerry Jones came out talking about how they hope that he just had a failed drug test. I don't know when it happened, just some late news that I've heard about. But if it cost him the chance to play in the playoffs, let's be honest, what would happen to the NFL if we carte blanche drug tested every single athlete and owner too the day of the games, Big C, not a week before the games, but the day of the games, they drug test every single person that has on a uniform. Do you think we might be surprised at how many people would show something, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the reason you don't drug test owners because half of owners would be suspended, okay?
Yeah.
We've had owners that we've seen arrested with prescription drugs that weren't theirs.
Yeah.
They had obtained illegally. And they weren't suspended for a year. You know, they weren't held over the fire like a player would be, Charlton.
Yeah.
There's a different standard, and that's skin privilege.
Yeah.
It's a different standard as far as how you treat it. Look at how many owners have been and coaches have been hit with DUIs, Charlton.
Yeah.
Skin privilege once again. Okay, different level. And they say, well, an athlete is out. It's his body, Charlton. More athletes get hurt without having something in their body than athletes that get hurt with something in their body, Charlton.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a proven fact.
And
you're not conscious about what's going on if there's something in your body. You play with fear without things in your body, Charlton, and it's always been. You know, you might test an athlete before a game. How long does something take to get into your body? I mean, you know, when I played the game, Charlton, I mean, we took injections.
Yeah.
We took pills. This is before, during, and after the game, Charlton. You know, if a team prescribes something to you that may be illegal, and they test you after the game and you fail a drug test,
yeah,
the team will give it to you, Charlton.
Yeah.
You know, you think about the narcotics that were passed out over the years, especially the football players, Charlton, that no one wants to talk about. You know, every team had a doctor, every team had a trainer with a little black bag. You could walk into the office at any point, and we came so pronounced to what certain drugs were and what they did. You ordered them by name when you walk in and say, I need some of this, this, and this. Yeah. And it was given to you freely. And yet, you know, if you were to do that outside the sports arena, Charlton, obtain those things, all of a sudden you can get arrested for having a controlled substance.
Yeah, well, but
it's given the players all the time. You're injected.
Yeah.
When you think you're killing pain with an injection, Charlton, it's not just Novocaine.
Yeah,
okay?
I agree.
That's not the only thing they're giving the players.
What's up?
But, you know,
go ahead, C. Go ahead.
When you sit there and the team doctor, I mean, he's a subscribed physician.
Yeah.
So he can legally give you these things, Charlton, but legally you can't go get them elsewhere.
Well,
you know, you can't go to a normal doctor in the street
and get what you want. Yeah. Well, see, when we talk about the concern, and we know, let's just be honest, we call it real sports talk, not fluff sports talk. Most athletes that play at the high level, they need something. Even the great Jerry Jones, he said after Monday's game, we do not know the status of his playoff ability to play. But we're happy to see these young guys making plays. He said nothing about, we're going to see if we can get this guy some treatment. He said nothing about, we're going to see if this guy needs any type of help. We're going to see if his family's okay. He never said anything about, we want to make sure this young man gets the right type of treatment if he is having an issue. He said we're encouraged to see these young guys making plays because the honest truth is, if you don't do something that the medical doctor tells you to do and you choose not to play, you get cut from the team, Big C. If you want to be a teammate and you want to be a part of this team, you better do what our doctor tells you. And these doctors who are hired by these teams, they're not hired to keep guys in what you call concussion protocol or keep them on the injured reserve list. They're hired to get guys out on the racetrack so they can play, Big C. And speaking of the racetrack, this segment is sponsored by One Life America Life Insurance. We're the leaders in the country when it comes to final expense. We also are looking to hire over 1,000 licensed insurance brokers because we simply want to put people back to work. Also, CYNN Entertainment and promotions. And when it comes to promotions, Cynthia Evans, she's the best in Northern California. So, Big C, there was a thing back in the day when the Raiders physician, I forgot his name, but they were in Los Angeles at the time. There were some players that were saying that they were cleared to play by this doctor that was hired by the team. Because the doctors are there to tell you when you can get back on the field, not if you're necessarily healthy or not, if that makes any sense. I know there was a movie called North Dallas 40 that was kind of a parody of the NFL, but it was actually some real stuff in there. I don't think people want to see if athletes are healthy. I don't think people want to watch athletes that don't do something to create better performance. If that's the case, we wouldn't be so turned on to watching guys who are big, strong, and fast and can run a 40 and 4.340 when they're 200 pounds. We're not interested in watching guys that don't bench press 400, 500 pounds. If all your bench press is 200 pounds, nobody's lining up to see that game. So we love seeing the guy that can hit the home run. We just don't want to know what he's putting in his body to do it. But if he's not doing it, we don't go to the games. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Jonathan, I love some of my alumni who are on these sports talk shows, okay? And they sit there and they talk about the glamorous part of their career and of their team and of their former teammates.
Yeah.
Okay? You just spoke about the Oakland Raiders and a team doctor, all right? None of these guys will talk about Kurt Marsh, okay? University of Washington is playing the University of Alabama in part of this 14 National Playoff Championship.
Yeah.
Kurt Marsh was an All-American tackle at the University of Washington, okay? A first-round draft pick of the Raiders, Charlton, back in the 80s. Kurt Marsh took so many injections, in his lower legs, Charlton, from having ligaments torn and broken bones and playing in these conditions because it was about being on the field, okay? It was about being on the field. He only played 8 years in the NFL, and he played at an all-pro level.
Yeah.
But within 5 years of his NFL career being over, Charlton, Kurt Marsh had to have his lower leg amputated. Do we see the guys on television talking about the travesty that former football players have had to go through because they gave their all for their team and their teammates, and they're told they couldn't be a quitter, they couldn't be a weakling and all that?
Yeah.
Kurt Marsh was an ultimate competitor, okay? This man lost his leg because he was competitive, and he was told, you can be replaced. So ball players, Charlton, did everything they could to stay on the field. But it cost the man a lower leg. Have you ever seen, ESPN say, hey, this is the perils of football. This is what young people shouldn't put their bodies through. Have you ever seen Fox do that? NBC, ABC, CBS, have one of these guys, have one of these networks, bring Kurt Marsh on. Show Kurt Marsh as a player at the University of Washington.
Yeah.
Show him as a first-round draft pick of the Raiders. Show him playing at an all-pro level at offensive guard. Show him without a leg now. This is the peril of football. This is what doctors and teams will do to you, Jonathan. This is what's never talked about in football, the untold story of all the players, Jonathan, who have gone on, who've been suicidal, who have done heinous acts outside the arena based on pain. You think about the Dolphins, Jonathan, the last time they were in the Super Bowl. 1983, I believe, 84, against the 49ers.
Yeah.
In Palo Alto.
Yeah.
They had a tight end named Don Johnson, okay? And he caught the Dolphins' only touchdown in the game. But, he played for several years, and he was all for a couple of years. This guy can barely walk, Charlton. He's had 4 back surgeries, spinal fusions.
Wow.
He can barely walk. He was an all-pro tight end. These are the stories that the NFL don't want you to know about.
Yeah.
That the networks don't want you to know about. I think about Johnny Cooks, a #1 draft pick out of Mississippi State, and with the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah.
He and Marv Edmond, the defensive tackle out of the University of Washington again.
Yeah.
Were drafted 1 and 2 with the Colts. They had 2 first-round draft picks that year.
Oh, Steve Edmond, I remember him. Yeah.
Yeah, Steve Edmond, number 90 out of the University of Washington. Cooks can hardly walk. He has to walk with assistance. He was a middle linebacker. He won a Super Bowl ring with the Giants when they beat Buffalo on the wide right down in Tampa.
Yeah.
But that Super Bowl ring is meaningless, Charlton, because he can't walk. And we've all seen the debilitating injuries of Earl Campbell, one of the greatest beloved running backs of all time, Charlton.
Yeah.
Hip replacements, knee replacements. The contemplating of suicide because he was utilizing so many narcotics after the game for pain, Charlton. And as a middle-aged man, he was contemplating suicide because his body was in so much pain. It had been wrecked so much. Earl can still barely walk.
Yeah.
But, we don't talk about what happens to these athletes when the lights go off. We see a few guys on television, Charlton, who still get around okay.
Yeah.
But the pioneers of the game, Charlton, who gave their bodies, and a lot of them their minds because they were gone. No one talks about that because you don't want to know the truth. So, and that was in a movie. Well, matter of fact, you talked about it with Jack Nicholson and
Tom Cruise. Yeah.
You don't want to know the truth. This is what America misses with sports, and I don't care whatever sports. And I think about there was baseball player, and I can't remember his name. He was with the Cleveland Indians, one of the greatest young players of the time, and I know his name started with a C, and it just, escapes me right now.
Yeah.
But he was hitting the eye with a pitch when he was standing there in the batter's box. And this is why I said these sports writers should all be forced to go in there and take live pitches. And it destroyed his career, Charles. He had been a Rookie of the Year, the MVP candidate, and it destroyed his career. He got hit in the eye with a baseball, and he lost the sight of that eye. But, these are the things that athletes sacrifice. Yes, we love to see the Hall of Famers. We love to see the guys walk out there when they have the anniversary of a Super Bowl championship.
Yeah.
But what about the guys who can't walk anymore, Charlton? What about the guys who can't see? These are the players that we don't revere them. We forget about them.
Well,
and that's what the game has done to so many.
Yeah, and I think when you look at that, I think human beings, we love competition. We love seeing guys get beaten up as long as it's controlled. That's why MMA is only second to football and basketball. It's something that people want to watch. When we look at the NFL right now, even coming up on the playoffs in this segment right now, is talking about the NFL playoff picture. And you have in the division lead for the AFC, New England 13-2, Oakland 12-3, Pittsburgh, they're 10-5, Houston's 9-6, and Kansas City's 11-4 with the Dolphins 10-5. We love seeing these great players, these great athletes who put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears because we love it. The fact of the matter is we love watching a fight. We love the knockout punch more than we like than someone being counted out, Big C. We love that. We love the home run. We even love when someone's sacked and driven hard into the ground. And we love that more than someone just being pushed out of bounds. Because there's something about the competitive nature in people. We actually love it. I just hope that we can make it safer. Because if we don't make it safer, then obviously we have more issues. And talking about making it safer also in the NFC, Big C, Dallas is 13-2. The Falcons are 10-5. Seattle's 9-5-1, followed by Green Bay 9-6. In the wild card, you look at the Giants 10-5, and Detroit and Washington. Their fate is still there, hoping, depending on what happens this week. But just one thing I want to ask you about the NFL. When Jerry Jones is saying we're glad that he could go out and make some plays, not that we hope he's healthy, or we're going to see if we can get him some help like they were trying to get Johnny Manziel some help. He just wants the guys that can make plays, okay? Doesn't care about their health. I still wonder, that's the same guy that was talking about benching a quarterback and Dak Prescott, who's won more games than any quarterback in the game this year. So Jerry Jones has shown, and even Michael Irvin said at one time, Jerry Jones doesn't care about people. He cares about winning, supposedly. That's why I'm so, befuddled by the wanting to bench Dak Prescott. And there's still some talk he may do it in the game against Philadelphia. So Jerry Jones, is he any different than any other owner? Don't they just care about the money, Big C?
Well, Jerry Jones knows about money. It's about himself. He's about notoriety, Johnson. How much notoriety can I get on myself?
Yeah.
Everything about the Cowboys is about Jerry Jones, okay? That's the reason why he and Jimmy Johnson parted ways. Because Jerry's ego was too big to have a coach that was winning, and he wasn't getting the notoriety because Jimmy could speak. He was a showman. He had learned how to entertain the media. He didn't need Jerry in the back room talking.
Yeah.
And no one wanted to talk to Jerry. You think about how popular Jerry became with the media after Jimmy Johnson left, okay? All of a sudden, Barry Switzer, who couldn't put together a sentence, it seemed like he and Terry Bradshaw had been hanging out together.
Yeah, that's funny.
and so, all of a sudden he became the spokesperson for the Cowboys. They didn't need a media, person. Jerry Jones handled everything. He did the radio show, the press conference, whole practice, and everything. The coaches meeting. This is Jerry Jones. His ego is bigger than that stadium that they play in.
That's why they have such a big screen TV, right? Is that why the TV's like 9 blocks long, Big C?
But there's no other team talking about benching their quarterback, Johnson. No team in the playoff run talking about sitting and resting their quarterback. They want to keep their quarterback sharp. Is anybody ever benched Aaron Rodgers coming to the playoffs?
No, not at all.
Regardless of their record. Nobody ever benched Brett Favre. Drew Brees, Johnson. Was Peyton Manning ever benched? A couple of years ago when he had a record-setting season. Tom Brady, when he had a record-setting season before that. Nobody benched these guys, Johnson, to see what we had as a backup quarterback. No winning team cares what they have as a backup quarterback because that's what he is, a backup quarterback. That's the reason why he's not the starter. He's the backup quarterback.
Yeah.
So you don't worry about when you're winning for that various reason. You know, it's just like in Jacksonville, okay, Charleston?
Yeah.
You've had Blake Bortles that you've ridden for the last 3 years and got nothing out of him, okay?
Yeah.
You fire your coach, you know, a couple of weeks ago in the season. You fire the coach. Who do you replace him with, Charleston? Doug Maroney, okay?
Yeah.
Doug Maroney was a former NFL head coach, okay? The last team he got fired from just fired their coach today.
Wow.
Yesterday. The Buffalo Bills. So that lets you know he wasn't a winning coach when he was in Buffalo. Because when you look at the Eastern Conference, Charleston, where New England has dominated this conference since 2000, okay?
Yeah.
That Tom Brady has been at home and hasn't gone anywhere. Well, when you think about teams like the Bills, the Jets, and the Dolphins, Charleston, since 2000, they've had 23 different interim and head coaches with those teams.
Wow.
Those 3 teams. So you wonder why that division is unstable? Look how many head coaches have been through that division. And only one head coach has been there every year.
Yeah.
Bill Belichick. And what has he done? He has stabilized an organization. They have been consistent winners. You're not going to win every year. You're not going to win right away sometimes.
Yeah.
But you have to build the foundation to get to that point, Charleston. There's a reason why organizations hire head coaches, because they feel that the one that's there is not getting the job done. They never look at the players not being able to complement what the system is. You know, you look at the Minnesota Vikings and Mike Zimmer, where the defensive backs did a mutiny on the coach last week, where they went out and not do the defenses that were called. They were just freestyling out there, doing their own thing. You know, but the coach is limited. He can't go cut them.
Yeah.
Because that's the general manager. So the power's not in his hand. That you got players that are insubordinate, do what they want to do, cost you a victory, cost you any chance of the playoffs, because they're not liking you at the moment. So they're going to get you fired. This is what happens in sports, Charles. Is that players with egos, you got coaches with egos, and you got an owner with an ego. And until everybody gets on the same page. When was the last time you heard Robert Kraft in a press conference after the game?
Never.
Bill Belichick around.
Never.
Okay? And we just talked about a conference since 2000, which has had 23 different coaches with 3 teams. Okay?
Yeah.
No one knows who Robert Kraft is other than when he's lifting up a Super Bowl trophy.
The championship trophy,
Yeah, that's the role of
But Big C, I will say that was a fumble when they cheated the Raiders back in the day. You know, the quarterback was going back for a pass. He was actually, Brady's hand was hit. The Raiders recovered it. And the good old boy, Brady was walking off the field. I'll never forget that we talked about it on the air back in 2000 when it happened. Brady was actually walking off the field with his head down. And the good old boys made a phone call. They came back and said it was not a fumble. His hand was going forward. So Kraft has also gotten the benefit of the doubt. I don't know where that came from, but I was just feeling the pinch of that when you said holding up trophies, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, but it comes down to consistency. You know, and those 2 franchises have gone different directions since that point, John. You realistically have to look at it. You know, since that emotional withdrawal from the Raiders after that game, it seemed to just resonate. They could never get over that, Charlton, for over a decade. A decade and a half. They hadn't got over that. But, you know, you look at the Patriots organization, and when we talk about the consistency of being there, whether it's, the turnover of players, they probably have the highest ratio of turnover in players in that division than anybody.
I agree.
When you think about it, Bill Belichick will get rid of a player that he feels that he can get some value for it, whether trade, you know, or even just releasing them. He's done that to all pros, Charlton. He hasn't sit there and said, you know, you have to retire. There's a time when it's time to move on.
Yeah.
And some organizations don't understand that. How to move properly, how to position personnel.
Yeah.
And if everybody watched the blueprint of them, your organization would never go down.
Well,
that's what we have to look at.
Big C, in the final few minutes of the program today, I just want to say this final thing for a lot of the athletes out there in all the sporting leagues, whether you're the NFL, the NHL, the NFL, the NHL, you know, Major League Baseball, basketball, football, all of them, soccer, hockey, we do all of it. And whether you're any Division I college football program, boys and girls sports, any high school in the United States of America, we'll be offering athletic insurance. We can cover any athletic team in any athletic event, not only in the United States, but in different countries as well, Follow Big C Sports for that. And Big C, as I bring that up, I just want to say we'll close out the final few minutes in saying as far as these awards for the Male Athlete of the Year voting, number one, they had LeBron James, and he was followed by Michael Phelps, along with Usain Bolt, the fastest guy in the world. There's Chris Bryant, there's Stephen Curry, and there's a few other guys going down the list. But you get the gist of it, the guys who are the best in the world at what they do. And I also want to throw in Big C Sports as the number one sports show in the universe. We talked about Star Wars and how we talked about being out there in the universe and how people listen to what we're doing worldwide. We are really the only impromptu sports show in the world, Big C, on the iHeartRadio network. I appreciate so much that's coming in this great 2017. And we talked about great athletes and some of the sports programming out there. Big C, I want to close out the show with your thoughts. Number one, on who you think is one of the, say, the Male Athlete of the Year. And then also what you love so much about this business that makes you excellent. Go right ahead, sir.
Well, Charlton, if I'm going to put my hat into the ring, because, I may not do that because I don't want to get sunburned on top of my head.
Yeah.
I have to look at Usain Bolt, okay?
Yeah.
When you think about what he's done over the last 3 Olympics, and not knocking Michael Phelps with all the different gold medals that he's won, Charlton being the most decorated Olympian of all time.
Yeah.
But I look at Usain Bolt. He couldn't lose an event. Michael Phelps could lose an event and medal and still have his prestige.
Oh, yeah.
He could be on a relay team, Charlton, and win that gold medal. But Usain Bolt, in 3 consecutive Olympics, okay, Charlton? 3 consecutive Olympics.
Yeah.
9 gold medals. Not losing a race. Not a 100, not a 200, not a 4x100 relay.
Wow.
And I think that the talent of Usain Bolt and how good he is. ESPN, one of our brothers, did a commercial on him after not this past Olympics, but the previous Olympics in London.
Yeah.
Where they had him come clocking in for work. Turned around and clocked out 9.8 seconds later. and the rest of the broadcast thought, wow, he's losing a step. Those people thought his career was over at that time. But, to come back in this last Olympics down in Rio, and to go out on the world stage, we're not talking about a situation where no one sees him, John.
Yeah.
This is the world stage where everybody is watching. And to hold the claim, okay, we've had many athletes in the past, Willie Bob Hayes, Jesse Owens, Carl Lewis.
Yeah.
The fastest man in the world. It's like being the heavyweight champion of the world, the prestige is over the 40s, 50s, 60s,
Yeah.
and 70s.
Yeah.
To be the fastest man in the world, and ever since the modern day Olympics has been out there on stage, this is a title that, is prestigious. And he has held it for 3 consecutive Olympics, Sean.
Yeah.
That's unparalleled to not have lost a race. To be the fastest man in the world over a 12-year span. We're not talking a 4-year span, not 6 years, 12 years.
That's amazing.
Think about how many kids and athletes have come and gone during that time, Charlton.
Yeah.
But 12 years, the fastest man in the world to me. He's the athlete of the year and of the decade.
Well, Big C, I tell you, there's something about the world of sports and competition. This is the greatest business in the world. I think anyone who has a chance to do what you love, you're very blessed. You do it because you love it, and you do it with your higher self. You do it from your subconscious mind. Not everybody's going to like you, no matter who you are, no matter what sports athlete or what broadcast partner. Everybody has a talent. I just encourage everybody to go out and exercise your talent, make your dreams come true. And sometimes it takes the help of other people, but you got to have it inside of yourself where you're responsible for it happens. And every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time worldwide, follow Charlton and Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network, the number one network in the universe, and also the number one sports show in the universe is Big C Sports. And also, as we say in every show, there's never an excuse for domestic violence. No woman should ever have to go through that garbage on her own. If you see anyone in trouble, just call 911. And as we always say on every program, not only do we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.